Y'all just remember one thing as I'm teaching. God asks for your availability, not necessarily your ability. So y'all just keep that in mind. And mine, I got a whole lot different teaching than a lot of people because I do a lot of rambling, rabbit chasing, but at the end I hope everything goes together. I'm old enough when I wish I could say I lived it my whole life, but I was always in church. When we were coming along, we had Monday night was M night, mission night. Thursday night was prayer meeting. That's what we did. Not taking away anything at all from Bible study. I love Bible study, but I'm saying we had true prayer meeting. So I'm going to tie everything in together. I'll check some of y'all's ages. How many of y'all know the song Faith, Hope, and Charity? Anybody here that old enough to know that song? That's the way to live successfully. How do I know? The Bible tells me so. Guess who sung it? Guess who sung it almost every week? You know?
No, sir, I don't know it.
Roy Rogers. That was on Roy Rogers just about every week. Of course, that is checking your age, because a lot of y'all might know who Trigger is, might not know who Roy Rogers is. But anyway, like I said, I'm going to tie it all in together because the main emphasis tonight to me is going to be on prayer. And of course, like a lot of people, I got on Google and looked, and needless to say, we won't get to all of them. But one of my favorite verses, or few verses, is taken from James 5. And it's 13 through the end of 20. Is there any among you afflicted? Let him pray. Any merry? Let him sing praises. Is any sick among you? Let him call for the elders of the church, and let them pray over him, anointing him with oil in the name of the Lord. And the prayer of faith shall save the sick, and the Lord shall raise him up. And if he have committed sin, they shall be forgiven him. Confess your faults one to another, and pray one for another, that he may be healed. The effectual, and this is the key part of it, the effectual prayer of a righteous man availeth much. Elijah was a man subject to like passions as we are, and he prayed earnestly that it might not rain, and it rained not on the earth by the space of 3 years and 6 months. And he prayed again, and the heavens gave rain, and the earth brought forth her fruit. Brethren, if any of you do err from the truth, and one convert him, let him know that he which converteth the sinner from the error of his way shall save a soul from death, and shall hide a multitude of sins. So, and I'm bad, I should have looked it up. But you know, the Bible says, who is righteous, know not one. So you say, well, how can you be righteous in prayer if the Bible says it's not a righteous person? But the prayer is that we be in the right relationship with God, because we'll never match the righteousness that we should match. I'll tell Maxine made me get notes because she knows I get off track sometimes. I'll tell a real quick story. There's two things I won't do. I don't think I will offend anybody, and I won't get too doctrine deep. That I said, no, that ain't right. That's not Bible. But there's this, and some of y'all's heard it. I know Jimmy's heard it because it's in my Sunday school class. This set of identical twins. One of them was optimist. Everything was rosy. Everything was rosy. The other one was pessimist. That's bad enough they carried him to the doctor, the counselor. Counselor said, well, I'll tell you what to do. Said, when Christmas comes, he said, you give the pessimist boy everything in the world you can even dream he'll want. He said, now the preacher used this word a few weeks ago, so I couldn't use it. Said, go to the other boy's room, fill it up with horse manure. Said, don't give him nothing but horse manure. So the pessimistic boy got up, went in there, had a bicycle, go-kart, everything you can think of. He went to crying. Said, son, what happened? He said, well, if I get on my bicycle, I might fall and get hurt. He said, if I use this toy, I might wear it out, it get wore out, and I can't use it anymore. So he went to squalling. So they opened up the optimistic boys, nothing in there but manure. The boy ran and got a shovel, went to just laughing up and down. Said, son, what was wrong with you? He said, with this much manure, there's got to be a pony somewhere. So So, point I'm making is we need to be, I've got a brother, not quite that bad, but I got a brother, Jamie knows him, used to be his neighbor. He sees the glass half full. I see it half empty. That's just my nature. I don't like it, but that's just the way it is. But anyway, as we talk about the different things, the prayer, of course, we know Hebrew talks about I don't know why I'm nervous. I still get nervous. I've had to talk in front, not bragging, just the fact I've had to talk in front of vice presidents of DuPont, safety meetings and that kind of stuff. But I still get kind of nervous in front of, for some reason. Anyway, but, we talk about of course, we know that Hebrews is the Hall of Fame of faith. I need a lot of participation because I got several verses I'm going to read. Hebrews 11:1. I don't know where that came from. I hope that wasn't me. Somebody mean reading Hebrews 11:1?
Now faith is the assurance of things hoped for, and the conviction of things not seen.
So that's the definition in the Bible of faith. Like I said, I'm bad about rambling on. Try to tie in faith and hope. They're tied in together, but at the same time, they're entirely different. There's a lot of, just like wisdom and knowledge. They're tied in together, but they're entirely different. You can have all the knowledge in the world, but not have wisdom, it's no good. Just like what Paul says about, if he could speak with the voice of angels and didn't have charity, it'd be like a sounding, and I'm surely not quoting word for word now, but it said it'd be like a sounding brass. But anyway, so faith is the basis of everything. Okay, Romans 5:1-2.
Sure.
Okay.
Romans 5:1-2.
Uh-huh.
Therefore, since we have been justified through faith, we have peace with God through our Lord Jesus Christ, through whom we have gained access by faith into this grace which we now stand, and we boast in the hope of the glory of God.
So there we go with our hope and our faith. The ways to pray is, and I got one more. I got two more actually. Then we'll get into as far as the New Testament. James 5:13-20. Okay.
Is anyone among you suffering? He should pray. Is anyone cheerful? He should sing praises. Is anyone among you sick? He should call for the elders of the church, and they should pray over him after anointing him with olive oil in the name of the Lord. The prayer of faith will save the sick person, and the Lord will restore him to health. If he has committed sins, he will be forgiven. Therefore, confess your sins to one another and pray for one another, so that you may be healed. How far?
That's good. Like I say, I kind of entered just a very little bit of, I won't give a whole lot of testimony. I know a lot of y'all, some of y'all been here almost as long as I have. But anyway, a real brief testimony. Before I was a year old, of course, we lived out in the country, and my family was called in 3 different times. And back then, the neighbors would come in and clean up the house. In other words, they said I wouldn't make it through the night. Then when I was 5 years old, I was of course, I know a lot of y'all might not know who I'm talking about, but Dr. Sidbury had the children's hospital at Rochville Beach. And I never can remember what I had, but it's the opposite of leukemia. In other words, instead of the white, the reds was taking over. So I was up there for a while. Up till the 10th grade, and I don't know, I guess the Lord healed me, but up till the 10th grade, I missed just enough. In other words, like back then they declared if you missed 20 days, you wouldn't make your grade. I'd missed 19 or 18 days. I was just real sickly. You can't tell it now. But anyway, I remember this as good as it was this morning. I've always thought it's kind of funny. My grandmother, my daddy's mother, and her sister were Methodists. And the little old Methodist church had to close down because they lost all the members. They had to close down. So they ended up going to the Holiness Church. And I'm surely not one of these that get into denomination, but I'm saying you can't get much further apart as far as the order of worship than the Holiness and the Methodist. But anyway, I was real sick one time, and we were fortunate. Mama left us very few times. My mama left us. She was a stay-at-home mom. Of course, back then about all of them were. And I was sick. I mean sick. And my grandma and her sister, my great aunt, they went and got their preacher, the young holiness preacher. And a lot of people say, well, that you were going to get well anyway. But anyway, because I believe in prayer probably more than anybody in here. But they came in there and prayed on me. And by the time they left the door, I was up and about. You know, I truly believe in, I'm not saying it happens every time, because I know everybody in here has seen somebody die that they prayed for. But anyway, I'm just saying I've seen it happen in my life so many different times. But anyway, and so I'm a true, and that's what we're going to do. We're going to end up in a season of prayer if I don't run over. But anyway, and so, and like I say, I'm trying to tie into faith. I tell, and like I say, I'm bad about telling stories. Y'all might have heard this one. This old lady, she was a shut-in. And so she was a shut-in, and this tree grew right there at her window. The only way she couldn't get up and down, so all she did was look out that window. So she got down on her knees. She said, Lord, please move that tree out of my way. And so then the next day she got up, she said, I knew you weren't going to do it. So, I mean, that wasn't a whole lot of faith in that prayer, you know. But if we'll be honest, I think, too, a lot of times I try my best. I'm not good about keeping a prayer journal, but I try to thank God as much. I remember, y'all know, this is a little bit closer to y'all's time. Maybe y'all remember her. But I remember Lulu Roman on Hee Haw, and she used to talk about the ever-ending shopping list. In order to say, give me this, give me that, give me this, give me that. And I'm bad about that. But I try to, when God does answer prayer, I try to say, well, I'm going to thank you just as much as I prayed for it. And I feel like that's very important, that we thank him as much because we're good. And that's what she said. She said, well, thank you, Lord. And then she'd put them back on the shelf when she didn't need them. And if we're honest, a lot of us will do that. I'm talking about myself now. And but anyway, so that talks about how to pray. And this is just a few of them. And this, I said this before I told the story. I should have told this first. Pray with faith and without doubting. In other words, when you pray, you need to pray that it's going to happen. Pray with sincerity. You know, and I'm ashamed to say this, but especially at a mealtime, a lot of times I pray, and Maxine will tell you, he said, well, did we even ask the blessing? You know, so that's not really praying with sincerity when you don't even know if you've asked the blessing or not. That's truly not said. Then fervor. Like we said, the fervent prayer of a righteous man availeth much. Pray with sincerity, and they kind of tie in together. Pray specifically. And I'm bad about, of course, I do call some people by name. I try to call everybody by name that I know personally, especially the lost. You know, I pray for ones that I know are lost, the ones that I know are sick, the ones I know have lost loved ones, the ones that are having some financial trouble. But anyway, try to mention by name as much as you can. And this is one, pray with humility. You remember and like I say, a lot of times I'll quote the Bible, and I definitely won't say where it came from or where, but just like the Pharisee, where he stood up and wanted everybody to hear his prayer. And I'll be honest, when I first got back involved in church, I'd be scared to death. We went to a real small church. I mean small, had about 33 members. And I'd be scared to death the preacher would call on me to say prayer. So I'd practice my prayers. And that ain't right, you know, because I didn't want to be embarrassment to anybody. But anyway, so we need to pray sincerity and with humility continuously. You know, Thessalonians says, pray without ceasing. And again, I don't want to misinterpret it, but what I mean, that don't mean, I remember several years ago, I guess you call him a guru, whatever you called him, that wear white and always sit like this. He taught a bunch of these yuppies to sell all they had and move up to the mountains. And they were them that felt like you had to be in a chance. What do you call that thing? What do you call them things like the people get into? Yeah, whatever that word is. Anyway, and then come to find out, when they all got doing that, he was leaving his Mercedes and going down to the motel, coming down the mountains and going to sleep in the motel. But anyway, so, and that, I mean, that's a true story, they say. A lot of times you don't know if the true stories are just somebody makes them up. Anyway, it's interesting if it's not true. And then pray with thanksgiving. I've already talked about that. We need to thank God for what he has done. And then the last thing, and surely not the last thing, but last of what I'm going to talk about, is pray for and with others. You know, we've, and I'm sure I know some of y'all men get there on Sunday mornings, but I know at one time, and we're bad about, well, I shouldn't say we, sometimes we as individuals or we as groups, you get a program started and then you drop it. I know used to we had prayer partners. And so if anything comes on your mind, just like in our class, a lot of times we might not be called prayer partners for that, but we'll call, if something's going on, just like we found out about Mary Kate a while ago. And you call some of the people that you know and say, let's, have prayer for her. But anyway, so pray for and with others. And then now we're going to be talking a little bit more about the, here's another definition I found for faith. Faith is trust and confidence in God, even though you can't see what he is doing. And that's a lot. Just like, and I'll tell you what really brought this on to me about the prayer. Of course, my wife's on the search committee, and I hope she don't tell me no more than she should. I hope most of us that have spouses on the committee, they tell you stuff in confidence. But they need prayer. They need prayer. Seems like every time they make 2 steps towards, they take 3 steps back. And I was on the pastor search committee a couple of times, and that's why I'm not on it this time. That's a story in itself. But I tell you, it's a thankless job. It really is. We say we're going to pray for them, and we need, as we close later on, we'll say a time of prayer. In other words, we do need to pray for them because it's really working. It's really working on them. And it's just amazing to me how many churches, just like I don't know how many of y'all know about it, but just 2 weeks ago, the one that accidents, he just resigned to go to be like a minister, whatever you call it, doctors. Yeah, like Dr. Clower. Anyway, so there's several churches looking pastors, and there's several pastors looking churches. So we know that God's going to work and send us the right man. Anyway, so even though we can't see what we're doing, that's just like if I tell y'all, it's like I got an expression, and I know y'all have all heard it. I won't say I've never told a lie before, but my expression, I say, if I tell you it's raining, get your umbrella. Because, so that's kind of the way it is with God. God's leading us in the right way. We just got, because it's easy. I can't remember exactly how many families have left, 3 or 4, but look how many's come. Especially during COVID, because we were able to keep the church open, even though it was outside. But God's still working in this church. I believe we've been here, and I don't believe in seniority. Please don't take me wrong. I do not believe in seniority. My vote's the same as Caleb's that's been here just a little while. We got the same amount of votes and all that stuff. I'm just saying we've been here about 48 years this year, I believe. We've seen a lot of changes. And most of them are good changes. They really are. But God's really blessed us. God, like I said, I hadn't always lived it, but I've been involved in church ever since I can remember. And I've never been in a church where the pastor left and the church actually grew. So that just proving that God's in control. But a few more verses, if y'all don't mind bearing with me, a few more minutes. This is how much I knew about the Bible. I mean, when I was a younger person, I used to call it Philippians. But somebody mind reading Philippians 4, 6, and 7.
Be careful for nothing, but in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known unto God. And the peace of God, which passeth all understanding, shall keep your hearts and minds through Christ Jesus.
Okay, then we'll go to the Old Testament with a few of them. Psalms 4:1. Okay, Psalms 145, 18.
The Lord is near to all who call upon him, to all who call upon him in truth.
Okay, and then Psalms 50, 15.
Call upon me in the day of trouble, I will deliver you, and you shall glorify me.
And that gets both of them. Like I said earlier, you know, I'm guilty of it. I try my best to do better. But the main thing is, and again, I've learned this a long time ago. What's one prayer that we pray that we know is going to be answered? It's in the model prayer. I'll die calling it the Lord's Prayer, but the model prayer. If you pray His will is going to be done, that's one prayer going to be answered. And sometimes it's hard to answer. It's going to be either yes, no, or wait a while. And there's a song, people that know me know I love listening to music. I like the Big Daddy Weave and whatever, what they call that, contemporary, modern, whatever. And I like, of course, obviously I like the Southern gospel better. But it's a song now that if God says no, there must be a better yes. And a lot of times, that's like, I guess, one of my favorite, as far as me personally. And again, I tell just a little bit of my background. I always talk about my grandma because my granddaddy died when I was about 9 years old. I remember, but not that good. But Grandma had 6 boys, and she had a small farm. I hear people talking now about being a small farm of 300 acres. I'm talking about 20 acres with 6 boys, she had one boy. Her second son was born with cancer. He was born with cancer, had cancer in the eye, so he lived to be 2. But anyway, the rest of them, then she had another son that had rheumatic fever, so he lived to be 34. And we got a picture, can't find him anyway. His little boy was there at the hospital with him. He was 6 months old, so he never knew his daddy. But anyway, so my grandma gave each one of the boys a lot of land. When I say a lot, I'm talking about, you know, not L-O-T, but a lot, L-O-T, lot. Anyway, so we were close to my grandma. But my grandma, she was, and I said, even though we moved off when I was 16, we'd still go back to see her. And Grandma was, she, matter of fact, like I said, was always real sickly. And I don't know the proper word to say. My brothers, we were close when we'd fought, when we were little. But anyway, but they were kind of, I won't say jealous, that might be too strong a term, but I was always sickly. So my grandma told me, she'd say she'd pay me as much not to work in the tobacco as they made working in the tobacco because she knew I was real sickly. And of course, the other 2 didn't like that good. But anyway, but I can still remember Grandma had, she started having mini strokes. She lived to be 88. She started having mini strokes. And then I said, Lord, you know, whatever your will is. That wasn't what I was really praying. I said, God, don't take my grandma. You know, even though she's 88, she's in bad health, I wanted Grandma to live. And I think about that many times. So sometimes it's hard to pray that God's will be done. I talk about hope, and another quick story, personal story. And I know everybody in here has been through it, either parent or grandparent or some even closer than that. When my daddy, he lived to be 91. He could breathe in, but he couldn't breathe out, COPD. But anyway, so all our family was in there, and the doctor told us, he said, well, tomorrow, and Daddy weren't responsive at all. He said, well, tomorrow we're going to have to make some strong decisions. So we went and, like most good Baptists did, we went out and got us something to eat and come back. Me and my oldest brother, David, like I say, Jamie knows David. We come back, and Daddy had turned. And I asked the nurse, I said, have you turned my daddy? He said, no, we hadn't been in there. I said, you sure you hadn't turned him? So I went in there and I said, Daddy? And he shook his head. I said, do you hear me? He said, yeah. And I said, and so, of course, he still didn't live in about 6 months, I believe, after that. But he still had time. He didn't have any ill feelings with anybody, but he had some time to get some stuff straight as far as what he wanted done and all that kind of stuff. But I'll tell one more story. People that know me know I probably joke around too much, maybe sometimes. But my daddy, I mean, I love my daddy. He was hard-headed. I love my daddy. But I would talk to him. The rest of them would kind of baby him, and I'd tell him just like it is. So I went in there one day. I said, Daddy, he didn't want to take the treatments. I said, well, Daddy, I said, you got two choices. I said, do you want to take this treatment or do you want to die? He said, neither one. So at least he was honest about it, you know. But anyway, but like I say, I didn't mean to ramble on, but I just told you my main thing of all of this is I want to close in a time of prayer. And I don't even know how long. I know I'm bad about getting long-winded, but close in a time of prayer. Because like I said, I mean, y'all heard just tonight. You know, we got Carolyn, we got Dalton, and now Mary. And, of course, I know a lot of y'all know him, and a lot of you don't know him, but my good friend up the road here, Ralph Davis, I know a lot of y'all have heard me tell about it, but I worked with him at DuPont and rode with him for several years. And out of 5, he's already lost his son to cancer before he was 30 years old. His oldest daughter's got cancer. Him and his wife, he's had cancer. Ralph, he's 82, 83. He's had cancer 3 times, and his wife's had it at least twice. He's got a granddaughter living with him. His oldest daughter, they've already called palliative care in on her. Anyway, and then his granddaughter's living with him. She's less than 30. She's already had a heart attack. So, I mean, like I say, and I think about Jeff and Angie. I mean, to me, I call it a modern-day Job, because they have, I mean, you just wonder about if you talk to Ralph right now, the first thing you're going to do is ask you how you doing. He's more concerned, the ones that know him know, he's more concerned about other people than he is as much as he's going through. And then, like I said, I know we mentioned quite a few here tonight. You know, I was thinking about Alan. I've never known as many, not except for during wartime, as many amputations. You know, we got a good friend. He used to come to church here, and I don't know how many of y'all know him, Stephen Eldridge. He just had to have his leg taken off, which he should have had it taken off years ago. He got shot real bad working on a power line. He had his leg taken off. And then what's the young girl from Shiloh's name? You know, she just had amputation. Then my neighbor, Milton Green, just had his foot taken off. And Michael just had his toe taken off. I declare. But like point them on is so many. But above all we talking about, I don't care, and I try to remind myself of this. I'm very concerned about the sick and the ones that, and I declare they used to talk about, and I know a lot of it's age. I tell my brother, he worked at GE and I worked at DuPont, and of course a lot of y'all worked at GE or family. Between GE and DuPont, we keep that obituary full, you know. And of course we're getting to that age, you know. But as much as I pray for the ones that lost loved ones, my main prayer, and I'm not being self-righteous, I'm serious about it. My main prayer is for the lost, because that's all that really matters. I know a fella, he was a contractor. He at DuPont, he had a great old big boat. I guess not quite a yacht. He had a motor home, had anything where you wanted, and on the back of his motor home, he had a sign. He said, when it's all over, the one with the most toys wins. And I thought, I said, how sad can that be? But a lot of people look at it that way. You know, they want what's like who was it Reverend Ike, or which one was it? You say, I'm not worried about the pie in the sky. I want what's here and now. And he was a preacher. But anyway, it's just so sad that so many people grab. And there's nothing wrong with material stuff as long as it's within reason, you know. But I'm serious. That's my main prayer, because I truly believe I'm not a Bible scholar. I'm not one of these doomsday advocates, because I remember back when they could teach about religion in school, it was, and I can't remember exactly what year. I know Jonathan, not Jonathan, but thinking about Jonathan too, on my mind too, Jonathan Palute. But anyway, weren't it Jonathan Edwards back in the 1800s that preached, and even some of the disciples thought that they'd live, you know, to see the rapture, to see Jesus come back. But I mean, the fact of the matter is, if it's 2024, 2025 now, show you how bad my mind is, or if it's, 3,000, he's still coming back. And it's still time to be ready. And I mean, people that believe that do look at prophecy and all that. I mean, if you don't watch what's going on in the Middle East and say, because like somebody said just the other day, matter of fact, I believe it might have said it at this church, or anyway, but there's not a prophecy got to be fulfilled. There's not one prophecy got to be fulfilled that hadn't been fulfilled. And every time they start talking about the getting together up there and coming in on Israel, I say, well, I'm ready, you know. But, you know, and I know, again, I quote a lot of people. I guess my favorite philosopher of modern time, well, not modern time now, is probably Barney Fife. I like a lot what he had to say. But, but then also, you know, Loretta Lynn, and this is back probably, what, the 60s. She had that song, Everybody Wants to Go to Heaven, but Nobody Wants to Die. But, and I remember, like I said, I've been in church my whole life, and I've heard a lot. I could talk till Jesus does come back or takes me, whatever, about different preacher stories and all I've heard. But I know most of y'all have heard this, but I'll tell it one more time. The little old boy, the preacher said, how many of y'all want to go to heaven? Everybody raised their hand, went and shouted, So the little old boy in the front, he said, son, don't you want to go to heaven? He said, yeah, I want to go to heaven, but I thought you wanted to get a busload to go right now. So if we'll be honest, a lot of us are ready and maybe prepared, but as far as being, and that's another one of them two words. There's a lot of difference in being ready and being prepared, you know. Anyway, I appreciate y'all listening to me. Has anybody got anything they want to add to or definitely take away